Dun 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 dun.
Yes, sir.
I always like getting down like that. I don't know why I get down like
The
that.
tantarans? You like
I
getting
love
down
them.
with the tantarans?
I love them. I remember I used that as a bar one time. I said something like I forgot. I said something about the gun. I jumped out with the gun. Dun 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 dun. It said something like that. The joint came off though when the way I did it, but it was just funny to take it. You know what I'm saying? To take something like that.
You know, we used to call like underwears like the what do you call them, like the short joints, like
the Fruit of the Loom joints, like the briefs.
We used to call them the tarantarans. You know what I'm saying?
Why did y'all call them that?
Just cause they just the tarantarans, like tarantaran. You know what I'm saying? Superman. The Superman underwears.
Oh, that's so funny, man. The Superman joint. No, that's what's up, man. It's funny to have like just those. I'm glad that I'm old enough to just remember the fun stuff as a kid. You know, I mean, everyone had, but my kids, they're still kids, right? So they can remember some things from when they were younger, but so much of their childhood is still going through it, you know?
Right.
Even though they don't feel like kids because they're not 7 and 8 and 4, they don't feel like kids, but I mean, obviously they're 14, 13, 11, they're kids. So for them, you know, they need like 10, 15, 20 years to be able to look back and like, remember when Papa used to do this or we used to do that? We laugh at it. It's
funny. I mean, talking about that, I just did 2 coloring pages with the one that has the remember we used to play ball. I don't know if you ever did or they did this down in D.C. area, but we used to take the milk crates from the corner store and we would cut the bottom out of the milk crate.
Play basketball,
and nail it to the street pole. You know what I'm saying? And ball. So one of the drawings I did was the original street ball, and it had the milk crate and some kids balling and hooping it up, and that's going to be a coloring page. The other one I did was double dutch. Double dutch, you can't,
double dutch.
You can't talk about the hood without double dutch. You know what I'm saying?
Man, you can't. If you ain't do double dutch, you ain't from the hood. Right. I mean, you had to. I ain't do it often because it was like for the girls in my neighborhood.
I was trash at it, so I ain't even try. Like,
so it was like you was like, man, you back then, like man, especially back then, like doing anything feminine, you ain't want to be sweet. You know what I'm saying? So
be sweet at all.
So it was
you
that,
was double
man.
dutching. You was trying to holler at one of the girls holding the rope. You know
right. It was more game than it was anything else. Ladies and gentlemen, this cross-examine. We are back to the grill again. The grill again.
Sir.
Back to the grill again. The grill again. You know what we do? We talk rap, we talk life, we talk social media, we talk Christ, we talk everything. Ain't got proof because we're cross-examining and you can't handle the truth. And when we say you can't handle the truth, we just don't mean from us. We just live in a day and age where people just can't handle the truth.
Truth be told.
And one of those truths we're going to talk about in just a moment. But this is season 5, episode 4. Man, we're excited. You know what I'm saying? We're excited to be back, man. You know what I'm saying? That's how we do it. Let's get it in. We got something we want to talk about, man. We're going to jump right into this. And now, initially, you know, Strike and I, we think deeply about culture. We think deeply about the church. We think deeply about sort of what's happening in the day and age that we live in. And we see things from sort of 2 motives, sort of the natural, what we see, and then more of the supernatural, what's happening, the spirit of the age type of thing, right? Like we are, Ephesians 6, we do not wrestle with flesh and blood people. So we have that. So when we do these episodes, we're always looking at, okay, here's this, but then what's the layer? What's the non-flesh and blood layer behind this? And so we're going to talk about this idea of, and you've seen this bumper sticker, I'm sure, plenty of times. Many of us, this is not new. You've seen the Coexist bumper sticker, right? And it's on the back of a car. And it's actually, when you look at the actual bumper sticker, you know, you get this sense of like, oh, it's a creative bumper sticker, you know, to take all of these different, you know, kind of religions and put them together and put them on a you know, rectangular sort of thing and stick on the back of a car. It's a good artistic reality. So we're going to talk about Coexist, but there's something else that Coexist is trying to accomplish. So there's sort of 2 levels to the idea of coexisting. There's kind of 2 different angles. So there's the religious side, which we'll get into what that is in both of them in a moment, but there's a religious dynamic, and then there's a deeper issue that we want to unpack and talk a little bit about, sort of the non-flesh and blood view. So the flesh and blood view is sort of the obvious, like everyone can see this, the Captain Obvious. But Strack and I kind of like to think through the non-flesh and blood, like what's not as obvious. I mean, you can see it, but you don't package it in the way that we're doing that. So we're going to talk about Coexist. Now, let me just give you really quick, in the original 2001 version. So this whole thing, right? Coexist was designed by a Polish graphic designer. His name is, I'm not Polish, so these names sometimes don't sound the way they look, right? So I'm going to just go for it. Yeah, but like there's always an itch. Yeah, they don't look like an itch of Vajijevich, right? They don't look like that, but that's so I'm going to add an itch to it. Yeah. If I mess your name up, fam, I apologize. It's not intentional. It's just that I didn't get it in. So his name is Piotr. Looks like Peter, but it's Piotr. If you're Polish, let me know how to pronounce it. I will say Peter. We'll say looks like Peter Lozenowicz, right? There's an M in the front, but the M, those joints be silent. So it looks like Lozenowicz, all right? He initially did this in 2001, the Coexist. He's the one who started it. And he did it, initially it included the 3 Abrahamic religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, right? So that was the original. But then lately, right now, there's a sort of a remix of it, a more recent version that has different symbols in those. So we're going to talk about what each of those are. And initially, we'll talk about why he did that in a second. But here's where it currently stands. So the current Coexist, so you'll see the C, right? The current Coexist is the crescent moon and the star, right? So that represents Islam, all right? So the crescent moon and the star. Then the O currently now is a peace sign, a peace symbol, that was used a lot during like the 60s, right? Especially during the what's it call it? I'm blanking right now. Huh? Well, era? Definitely the hippie era, but like, like the Vietnam War and all that stuff, right? Woodstock, it was that symbol.
I mean, and it's a peace symbol. The peace sign was huge during that. And so much so that during the 80s as a kid, I was drawing it like I was drawing a marijuana leaf, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was that kind of symbol.
Right. So that's the symbol, but it actually is not. You think, well, why would a peace symbol be there? Well, because it's actually a Wiccan symbol. So you have sort of the peace sign that we all think it means, but in sort of the Wicca, if you're in the esoteric world, the world of Wiccan,
this is bananas.
If you're in the Wiccan era, then that peace sign actually represents an upside down cross with Jesus's arms broken. So if you're into Wiccan and all that stuff, then that sign means something totally different. It's a direct attack against Jesus on the cross being an upside down cross, and with the arms diagonal means his arms are broken. So it's a celebration in the way that we wouldn't celebrate. All right, then you got the E, and the E kind of represents, because you'll have a sign of like gender equality. So the E of the Coexist, it represents the male-female sort of the symbolic nature, the scientific equation, the gender equality, no distinction between male and female, and that they're mixed, and sort of the culture that we see happening today. Then you got the X, which represents kind of the Star of David, which is Judaism. Then you have the I, which is another pagan Wiccan symbol, but it's if you look at it closely, it's the pentagram. It's really interesting when you look at it, because it deals with the pentagram, which usually is reserved for Satan worship, right? So then you have the S, which is sort of the yin and yang symbol, the Chinese kind of Taoism, right? You have that symbol, and then you have the T, which is the cross to represent kind of Christianity. Now, many of us have seen this, and this may be like, man, this is like an old thing. Why are we talking about this? Well, we're going to offer some perspective that's a little different than just we get it. If you are of any religious faith, but particularly if you are a Christian, you're more than likely not going to subscribe to this. So you almost wonder, well, why are you guys talking about this? When I say more than likely, because the world is a ghetto. You know, ghetto boys had it right. The world is a ghetto. People are just wild, and Christians are tripping.
I guarantee this bumper sticker is on Christians' whips.
100%.
I guarantee.
Yeah, I've seen it on some people who profess to believe on their cars. And the point. Well, we'll get to that in a second. So let's get into more specifically some of the origins. So graphic designer Peter Lodozinovich. So he designed this for an Israeli art contest in 2000. And the theme of the contest was coexistence. And there was a bunch of different people kind of doing this. So there was a pretty good financial first prize. And so this guy is the son of a very, very popular and famous, particularly over there in Poland, that side of the world, very popular graphic designer and artiste. So he's the son.
Yeah.
Huh?
He would design posters.
Yeah, posters and stuff like that. Yeah, his dad was like vicious in that. So he's like iconic, what they call the iconic Polish poster. His dad's name was Jan or John. I guess it might be John, right? So this Coexist logo became the son, Piotr's way of sort of honoring his father, right? So the logo was, at first, it didn't use the cross as a T, but then it eventually did. It was kind of weird how it's morphed into some different things. But the reason why it's morphed is because there have been different people. So I don't think this guy, he got it copped. Like, he didn't get it trademarked. So there were other organizations. There was a school in Indiana, and then another company that tried to reach out to him to get permit. They were using the Coexist kind of logo, but then they were trying to.
Technically, it's copywritten already, as he's an artist and he created it with its own. So it's already copywritten. So he could fight if he wanted to, but he just didn't. He's not rocking that way.
Yeah, well, he did kind of. So here's what happened. So he didn't win the competition in the contest, but somehow, because his father was famous and he did it and people liked it, it found its way in America, in Europe actually, to U2. U2 took it and really popularized it in 2004, I believe, right?
Yeah,
2004, 2005.
How would you like to be the winner of that competition and your logo or whatever you created, nobody could ever say they ever seen it? Like,
that would be crazy.
You know what I'm saying? But this dude, the runner-up or whatever he was, his joint is everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. Well, a lot of it was because the image went on tour with U2.
Right.
And they used it on their graffiti, and they traveled across the globe on what tour was it? It was the 2005-2006 international tour. It was on a headband. Mm-hmm. It was a headband worn by
professing Christian.
Worn by Bono, right? So he's the U2 frontman. Yeah. U2 is a huge band, and Bono is wearing this. And so we all know when it comes to celebrity, there's a reason why people brand with celebrities, because they make things popular and people want them. Right. So this logo was relatively unseen, right? And then U2, Bono, who is a professing believer, wears this logo on tour, the international tour, in 2005 and 2006, and this thing blows up.
Yeah.
And it gains acceptance, and now everyone is getting this, and it translates to bumper stickers. And so there was another company, a school in Indiana, and then another organization tried to use the logo, and they contacted Piotr, and he said they couldn't do it. So he was trying to get them to cease and desist. Yeah. And I'm not sure whatever happened with that and if they kept going and so forth. So Coexist, be clear, the idea where it has, again, let me repeat what the Coexist is. The C is the crescent moon and star that represents Islam. The O is the peace symbol that was used largely in the anti-Vietnam War riots, not really civil rights, but you would see it on some civil rights posters and stuff like that. But that's actually a Wiccan symbol, witchcraft symbol of Jesus upside down on the cross with his arms broken, which is why it looks like an upside down Y with the line in the middle. That's supposed to be a cross broken, right? So that's the O. The E is sort of gender equality, male, female, but it's also like the scientific equation symbol, right? So this kind of combining those. X, Star of David. The I is another Wiccan symbol taken out of the pentagram, which is often associated and used with Satanism. Then you have the Chinese yin and yang, which is the S, Taoism, and then you have the T, which is the crucifixion, right? Christianity. All right. So this was made popular by U2 frontman Bono as they traveled the world. All right. So here's part of the hustle with this thing, right? I want to read to you something that I read in this article that I thought did a great job explaining this. Let me read this to you real quick. It says, the coexist symbol draws upon peace as the central and unifying theme present in the world's great spiritual traditions. Promoting harmony over discord, these 7 symbols unite into one, reflect a much larger philosophy of human interconnectedness and respect, right? So this is sort of explaining what the coexist bumper sticker is trying to mean as an ideology, right? It says, centered around a giant peace sign, the symbols are artistic variations may occur between different representations. It says, united in art, these symbols echo the wisdom that resides beneath the various layers of different cultures, showing that without the borders we create, life can be lived in harmonious existence with one another. Okay, so this is what's happening, right? This is sort of all that's happening. Now, there was a foundation that tried to get the rights to this, and they called themselves Coexist Mission. And they were trying, this is how they describe why they wanted to use the logo and what they're after. They said this: Coexist Mission is to build social cohesion by sourcing high quality products from conflict zones around the world. By bringing together communities with a history of conflict, we strengthen the bonds between them and create a new generation free from prejudice, hate, and violence. Okay, so this is their thing, that they want to create a new generation free from prejudice, hate, and violence. All right. Coexist grew out of the Coexist charity to support the livelihoods of communities that we have worked with around the world. Profits are reinvested into the Coexist charity to support projects around the world. So you have this great charitable organization that is using Coexist, the symbol and all of it, to promote, again, what they say, a new generation free from prejudice, hate, and violence. So that's sort of the goal and all of that. So here's one concern for this idea of coexist, just one concern. And this isn't even essentially coming from a Christian worldview. This is just sort of sensical, right? This is just common sense. We already coexist, right? So this idea of coexisting is sort of like Captain Obvious, right? We already coexist. We live around people who do not look, think, act, love the things that we love, and we accept that as reality, right? One of the things about America as a nation is that, America as a nation hasn't used the mantra coexist, but that's essentially what the American dream is. If you put life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in one word, it's coexist. It's we've been able to coexist with different political aspirations, different religions, different economic situations. And that's why for some people, the pursuit of equity would be like, it was something so foreign because it's just like, but that's another form of coexisting, like slowly ushering people to have the same thing. But we've already been coexisting. This is not new to do this. People have done this throughout the history of the world. So in that sense, the bumper sticker is not new. It's a truism. It states something that already happens. If you probably live next to neighbors that you probably don't agree with. And so you coexist with them. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, we've been coexisting from the beginning of time and having trouble doing so from the beginning of time.
Yeah. Definitely trouble. So that's actually why the bumper sticker is important to the people who made it and those who believe they're trying to set it up as a symbol of something greater. So remember the words. We want to create a new generation free from prejudice, hate, and violence, right? And so most people think, well, not most people, but there's definitely a lot of people who think that prejudice, hate, and violence come from what? Religion. They would say that there are more wars fought because of religion, right?
For sure.
More hatred and violence comes and if you look at America, you look at world history, it's a combination of religion and politics. They've always sort of intertwined with each other. But you could say, like, look at the Crusades, that was religious. I mean, Islam used to force people to convert. Like, if you didn't, right. When Islam started, they would go travel to different areas of the world, and if you didn't believe in Muhammad and what he taught, they would kill you. So people would believe because they didn't want to die, So, and it still has a little bit of that in certain countries where they impose on you belief or die. I know in Middle Eastern countries, if you convert in many places from Islam to Christianity, they will either kill you or you'll definitely be disowned. There are women who get raped and forced to marry, and this is all stuff that the imams, who are sort of the pastors of the Islamic faith, they approve of this stuff. They will force you to marry someone who's Muslim. And so there's a lot going on. So this idea of coexisting in a religious sense was meant to bring all the religions together and say, hey, let's live without prejudice, without hate. And without
it's pretty much just live and let live.
Yeah,
that's what they're trying to push with the idea.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just, but coexist for certain people means different things. That's the problem.
Well, it definitely does, right? It's like the phrase, like, live your truth, right? That phrase, live your truth, is kind of a funny phrase because my truth is I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, so I'm going to live my truth, and then you're offended that I'm living my truth, right? So live your truth doesn't mean live your truth. It means live a truth that I approve of, right? Live my truth in your way.
Keep your truth to yourself.
Right. It's all of those things, right? Those things. So coexist is sort of a hustle in that we already coexist, and there's different ways that we process this. All right, let's move to another concern, right? There's another concern, and we're taking you all through the Captain Obvious stuff before we peel back what we think is a deeper issue. All right, so another concern is just universalism, right? Like this, it's impossible to do this, right? So this is clearly an anti-Christian agenda, right? So, and don't get it twisted. I think sometimes, I know we've said this on the show before, so this shouldn't be new, but there are times where I think people, because of Hollywood and sort of writings of spiritual warfare and things, we kind of see the enemy, anti-Christian sentiment, as hostile. But wanting to blow up the world and destroy everyone. But that's not really true. 2 Corinthians 11 says that Satan is an angel of light, right? So like he's an angel of light, and so his servants appear as angels of light. So these people don't mind righteousness. They don't mind morality. They just don't want morality that's motivated by the Messiah. They don't want morality that says, I'm doing this because I want to honor the Lord, right? So this is a universalism. That's an old thing. I mean, they were pushing back against this in the early church days. Justin Martyr and a lot of these things were pushing back against this sort of anti-Christian agenda, which essentially just says there are many paths to God, right? Yeah. The way Disney phrased it is all dogs go to heaven. You know what I'm saying? So
Rob Bell.
There's a sense. Yeah, Rob Bell did this, with his there's no hell, and sort of everyone will get saved, and it sounds good, right? I mean, this is the beauty of this, and it's also the curse of it. The beauty of it is who doesn't want to live in a place of harmony, right? Mm-hmm. A place of peace, and a place where people feel accepted. Who doesn't want that? I mean, I tell my kids all the time, I'm honest with my boys, but I tell them, like, look, sons, I don't want you to live in a crazy world. I want you to live in a place where you feel safe, you can have a family, raise that family, live in the, I don't want my kids to live in the bizarro world where everything is just like whatever and you don't know what to say. So we all want that, right? But there are real challenges to this. And so from the universalism side, when you say that there are many paths to God, and then in the actual symbol, you have two satanic, pagan, Wiccan sort of symbols, one an upside down cross, what you're doing is you're equating Satan with God.
That's right. Right?
You're equating Satan like, okay, these things are the same. There's There are no distinctions there. We can coexist, Satan and God. And so, on one level, we do coexist with evil and good. But we don't coexist as equal things that we should tolerate and pursue. And no one believes that. Because if coexist really mattered and you have satanic Wiccan symbols, right, that demonstrate violence, most people do not agree with Islam's treatment of women.
No. And
their violence towards people who don't submit them. So you don't already agree with that, right?
Right.
People don't agree with people who mass going into schools and shooting children, right? Like that's satanic to us. So you don't already agree with the fundamental principle once you list these sort of religions off. You just don't agree with it. Yeah. So you're equating God, Jesus, with Satan and saying, hey, we can all just do this.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing like I was telling you earlier Manasseh did. I mean, Manasseh built, he built altars unto all the hosts of heaven. So... and
he's the original Coexist, right?
Yeah, I mean, he wanted to bring God down to, what his father did. Hezekiah tore down all the altars. I mean, all the high places that were built up.
He went hard.
Hezekiah tore them down. And Manasseh, his son, came and built them all, so much so that the Bible even says that he was worse than all the generations that the Lord wiped out through the Israelites. So that's how bad this man was. Now, he ends up getting saved. Praise the Lord. But he definitely desired to worship whatever God he pleased at any given moment. And he wanted everyone to be that way. He wanted people to coexist to the point where there was no ultimate truth or absolute.
100%. And I would say, I think I said this to you. I think I said this to you on the phone too. I would even go probably a step further back and go to Solomon. Yeah. I mean, the whole essence, 1 Kings 11, the whole essence of the kingdom being torn was because Solomon built altars for all of these different women and built Asherah poles and things to their gods. And he let Israel worship. And so that's why God was like, look, because I love David so much and you're David's son, I'm not going to take the kingdom from you until you're dead. But because you've done this, it's a wrap, family. Like I'm taking the kingdom.
I mean, anything you try to apply to this statement of coexist or this system or whatever you want to call it, other than live and let live, is going to be contrary to the truth. It's going to be contrary to who God is.
You're going to have to compromise.
That's the reality. Yeah, you will have to compromise.
I mean, if you think about it, and we know this, but like if you think about what the whole point of God bringing Israel out of Egypt, right? And then setting up 10 commandments. The whole point was, look, what's the first one? Like, don't have any other gods. Don't put any other gods before me, right? That's so right. The foundation of Judeo-Christian values is you can't coexist.
That's right.
I'm bringing you to this, and the whole point, the whole storyline of the Old Testament, in many ways, was a pursuit of coexistence,
a separation.
Yeah, a worship of these gods, a universalism, worshiping these gods, marrying their gods, and all of it. That that was the whole point.
The Lord was separating Israel and saying, "You guys don't get to coexist with the rest of them."
Yeah, He said they can, but you can't.
Right, but you can't. And not only that, but I'm going to bring about the Messiah, and he's going to make a people unto himself. Yeah, so the coexistence just doesn't make sense. I mean,
and then go ahead.
I was just going to say Christianity is exclusive by nature.
100%.
It's inclusive because the Lord includes everyone who believes, but it's exclusive in that it excludes everyone who doesn't.
I mean, this is straight Matthew 10, right? Jesus said, "I didn't come to bring peace. I came with a sword. Amen. I came to cause division between a mother and a daughter, a father, and it was between some are going to believe in me in the family and some are not, and that's going to cause division." And
he even said, "I came for the household of Israel."
Right.
Which, dang, where's coexisting that?
Right. I mean,
what I'm saying?
It was some joints, man. It was some joints,
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So you get this idea of coexistence, equating Satan with God or anything with God. And we know clearly that to be a believer in Jesus Christ, we don't have that option. Now, there's a difference between being a jerk about it and then being faithful to it, right? Definitely. So we're not talking about people are like jerks for Jesus. And I just think, that's not the right way. So you get this perception that all of these things can be true. and this is just religious relativism. It's just not a reality. And we're talking about the exclusivity of our faith. Some of these other faiths are the same way. Right. You can't. Islam has this idea of people of the book, right? But then it contradicts that because it says, oh, the Jews and the Christians, they're people of the book. But then it has, oh, they're infidels though if they don't believe, and so you can kill them. So even Judaism is that. Judaism is so this coexist. If you want to put it in sort of movie terms, coexist is essentially like the Force. Mm-hmm. It's just there's a certain level of some kind of other species, things that we can worship and all do it together, and you just tap into the Force. And that's really a Buddhism concept. But just sense it, like, it's just there.
But it's not real. It's like chance. There's no power to chance.
There's no power in it.
No power to coexist. It doesn't. I mean, again, unless you just mean live and let live.
Yeah. Well, then you get into, philosophically, you get into the law of non-contradiction, right?
Of course.
It's the law of non-contradiction. It's the logic that something can't be A and non-A, right?
Right.
So Jesus can exclusively be, the only name under heaven in which people can be saved. Jesus can't say, no one gets to the Father through me, and then it'd be also, hey, you can worship these things too, and we're all good. Like, it's the same thing. No. So you got the law of non-contradiction happening and something like that. So most of the stuff we're saying up to this moment is pretty much duh. Like, you don't have to be. This is basic sort of Christianity 101 stuff.
We can go back. The Lord told us. This is how the Lord said we're supposed to coexist. Thou shalt not kill.
Mm-hmm. Don't really.
That was the Lord telling us to coexist.
And then you do have stuff like this, right? Then you do have one of my favorite passages in the Bible is Galatians 6:10. So therefore, as we have opportunity, do good to everyone, right, especially those in the household of faith, right?
Yep.
And then you got the golden rule, right? Here's the coexistence for believers. The golden rule, Matthew 7:12. Whatever you wish others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets, right? Yep. So in that there is a biblical coexistence, but it's not interfaith. Even as a Christian, it says, look, don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers, right?
No.
1 Corinthians 6. So there's this sense of like, hey, look, we want to do good to people. We want to share we want to be, and not even just sharing the gospel. We act like that's all we're supposed to do. No.
Right.
Do good to everyone, especially those in the household of faith. It doesn't even say, to be honest with you won't find many passages. This is a different episode I'm getting ready to creep into. You will not find many passages that tell you to share your faith with other people. You will find Peter saying, always be prepared to have an answer for the hope that lies within you, but you really don't, except, Timothy is told, do the work of an evangelist.
Oh, the Great Commission, make disciples.
Sure, that's general though. I'm saying you won't hear any specific commands in the New Testament to go do this, but there's assumed. So Paul, 1 Corinthians 14. 1 Corinthians 14, he says, look, don't speak in tongues, because if an unbeliever is present, they're going to be like, man, these people are crazy. He said, prophesy, because then they'll be like, man, God is in this place, right? So there's an assumption that unbelievers will be in your midst, and you're trying to, and that's what the part of the temple was for. When Jesus flipped over tables in the temple in John 2 and elsewhere, that was the part where the Gentiles were supposed to be allowed to come to that's the closest they could get to the presence of God. So there is biblical coexistence. It's just not the bumper sticker, right? That's this law of non-contradiction. All right. So everything we've set up to this point is sort of duh. Like, okay, this a bumper sticker. It's religious. And if we're honest, let's just be honest. This bumper sticker has not accomplished what it's trying to do on a religious level. Right now, you do have we haven't talked about this at all ever on the show, I think, and this isn't going to be a deep conversation about it. We can talk about it later, maybe, but you do have what's called Chrislamic, right? There is for some people a merge of Christianity and Islam, and they have their own worship I don't know if they call them churches or temples, or I forgot what they're called. But there is sort of Chrislamic. So you can Google this and look this up, and you will find people who profess to believe that both of these things can coexist. They're,
Interesting.
two of the Abrahamic faiths and so forth. So there is the Islamic studies and different things like that, right? But for the most part, the idea of coexist using primarily religious symbols has not taken hold.
You know what's wild about that is the Lord didn't even want Ishmael and Isaac to coexist.
100%.
Ishmael had to bounce.
100%. Should we? Let's take it back to not even letting Cain is after Cain kills Abel, he sends Cain away. So when Seth comes, Seth is not around Cain at all. You know what I'm saying? It's man, what you talking about? So again, we have this reality, right? So from a religious perspective, I would say this bumper sticker is cute. But it's a failure. It hasn't worked, all right? But there's a deeper movement at work with the idea of coexistence. And it's not really religious in the way that we typically understand religion, which is a God, rules to follow, ways to worship, proselytizing, bringing others in. In the way that we typically understand religion, this coexist bumper sticker, this idea has not worked. But there is a deeper movement that I don't think many people key in on, that I think it has actually worked beautifully in a very strategic and I would say satanic way. And when I say beautifully, I don't mean in an admirable way. I'm using it to, it's really
successful.
more, it's a successful,
smooth process.
Smooth. We just sort of got there in culture. So even though, because again, I think that the clever thing about the bumper sticker was that it is creative. Mm-hmm. It's oh, that's cool. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, even if you didn't know what all the symbols were, you knew enough of the symbols that it somehow represented religion. And so if you're anti-religion, you're man, whatever, that's stupid. But there are people who thought, oh, okay, there is a sense where this universalism works. But there's a deeper movement going on. There's a much deeper movement of coexistence going on. And that's what we want to spend the rest of this episode kind of talking about and pointing out. And there's some things that have happened that on the one level, they appear to be good things. Wow, that's actually a good thing. But it's opened the door to a lot of things that are very evil. All right. So let's talk through some of these, Strack. Let's talk through the first one, all right? The first one, and this one will seem it's a pretty good thing, all right? So one of the deeper movements of coexistence is the end of embarrassment, mistakes, and imperfections, right? So there's a sense of we want to get rid of these distinctions, these things that don't allow people to coexist. These things cause a degree of separateness in the culture, right? So we don't want to embarrass people. We don't want mistake. And we know by saying this, obviously, it's impossible to do this because there's too many people and not everyone buys in to this stuff. But what you've seen happen over the last few years has been really strategic and really working on a level. So there's the end of things that are embarrassing or mistakes that we make or imperfections. Let's just get rid of them. And on the front end, it seems like that's actually a good thing, especially when you look at the definition of embarrassment. So you got the two major dictionaries, Webster's and then the Oxford English, give two definitions of embarrassment. So one, Webster says, feeling or showing a state of self-conscious confusion and distress, okay, for embarrassment. And then the Oxford English says, cause someone to feel awkward, self-conscious, or ashamed, right? On the front end, boom, sweet. Who wants to feel awkward, ashamed? Don't say anything negative, right? Don't say none of that. Don't get rid of it. But the things that's challenging with that is when it comes to I'm gonna hold off on that. I'm gonna hold off because I want to go and I want us to get there together in a way that will lead us there. So I'm gonna hold off on what I was going to say. But there is this sense.
Can you give an example
of
this, of a good thing based on the definition of embarrassment? So, like, as far as the removal of embarrassment, how is coexistence pushing that?
So, like this, well, then I guess we'll have to just, I mean, I got it right here. We'll just skip down to one of them, just since you said that. So,
okay.
There is
My bad, I apologize.
No. I mean, we could do it. It's our show, we do whatever. So here's one of them, right? So there is a celebration and an elevation of mental health, right? So there's a celebration and an elevation of mental health, and by default, the elimination of sort of what's normal, right? So on one level, we all know we live in dysfunctional lives and dysfunctional families. For biblically speaking, we know that we're all sinful. We've all, fallen. We all fall short of the glory of God. We have these things, right? But there is, over the last few years, along with everything else that was happening, so along with social justice, Black Lives Matter, along with the rise of Christian nationalism, along with the rise of LGBT, there was also another movement that I felt like didn't have a unified front, right? And it started with, going back to the 90s, it started with the anti-bullying movement. So in the 90s, one of the primary movements was stuff like MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, right? That was a huge movement in the 90s. And then there was a rise of anti-bullying, and that was sort of attached to the toleration. That was the LGBT at the time. Their mantra was tolerate, right? So you had martyrs like Matthew Shepard, who was killed, and there was this sense that Ellen DeGeneres comes out. So there's this growing movement, but the anti-bullying movement, who wouldn't agree with that? I got kids, man. Kids in school. I got one kid in high school, 2 in middle school. You bully my kids, we have a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like so of course you want that. But that movement sort of became, okay, so let's not bully people, right? Let's not pick on people because they're not cool or because they're fat or because they're, like back when I grew up, like prime example, when I grew up, we would laugh at the kids that were on the short bus, right? Because the short bus, for whatever reason, represented kids with mental retardation, right? So again, the anti-bullying movement, that's good. Like don't make fun of these people, I used to when I was younger, and then now my son is on the autism spectrum. My son is on and I don't feel like that's a punishment of me, but I'm just saying I feel that. Like I feel that anti-bullying movement. Don't make fun of my son. I love that boy, but he's on the autism spectrum. Sometimes you wouldn't know because he's just chilling, but then there are times you can tell, okay, he clearly is on the spectrum in the way that he's acting, jumping around, the noises he's making. That's my dude. Love him. He's mad at me right now because he asked, could I pick him up from school early tomorrow? And I said, nah, fam, you've already missed a couple of days because you was sick, Vanita. And he's mad right now, so I have to make up with him after the show. But there was an anti-bullying movement that made its way through. But then here's where things changed. Once gay marriage was passed in 2015, and then there was a rise of the transgenderism movement, that elevated the anti-bullying perspective. It wasn't called anti-bullying anymore. It became about shaming, right? Everything turned into shaming and not shaming people and what is normal anyway, because many people see the transgenderism movement as a mental health issue. It was like, no, that's not a mental health thing. So all of a sudden the culture is shifting to a post-scientific society where now, no matter how you look physically or how you were born, it changes to like, we need to change this. We need to get rid of this. These people are embarrassed by the body that they have. They don't negate it. So then there's all of a sudden this celebration of mental health in ways that are not good. So this happened really clearly in 2017, I believe, when Kanye West put out, he was doing these 7-song EP albums for all of the people on his record label. And on his album, he had, like, I think on the front cover, he said, bipolar is my superpower, right? So he's taking something that's really, can be really serious, right? And on one level, you applaud that. Like, I don't know if you remember this show, Strack. Back in the 90s, there was a show called Life Goes On, and it was centered around a mentally, I don't even know how you say it now. It was Corky. Remember that? Corky, right? Yeah, Corky.
I remember Corky. Yeah.
That was so. There was a sense of like, hey, man, don't treat him any different. You know, he's not but he really is different. You know, Corky's not going to be able to. No, he was different. And back then we called it mental retardation. Now I don't know what the politically correct term is, but
I liken that to, you know, I liken that to I'm colorblind.
Right.
You know
yeah. Same thing.
I don't see color.
It's ridiculous. Man, see my color, my dude. See my color. You see color when you see me walking down that alley at nighttime. You see color.
Yeah, real rap.
I don't see color till you see me walking down the street and it's dark. Oh, it's a big black man. You know, that's a different conversation. Though. We don't want to go there, do we? So look, so you got this idea where let's celebrate serious mental health issues. So let's celebrate mental health issues that affect my sexuality. Let's celebrate mental health issues that affect my identity. Let's celebrate mental health issues that affect my safety. Like, oh, I don't feel safe. It's like, fam, when I grew up, it was sticks and stones may break my bones. Nowadays, man, you can't even say the word sticks. So it's like there's this celebration and elimination, an elevation of mental health. So Kanye West, bipolar is my superpower. And so people are like, oh, he's a genius. He's a savant. This man is wilding out right now. Right. Like this man is on a whole. He's wild. This dude is acting like the Lord has, you know, intentionally told him he's going to do all this stuff through him, and the bipolar nature. It's like nah, it's not something to celebrate. So that's an example that I think the culture in the coexist sort of ideology has slowly accomplished it by let's celebrate things that are real challenges in people's lives, right? Now, I think Lizzo is getting picked on by Candace Owens and them. And that's just what she does. Candace Owens is wild. I hope she gets saved. Because when she stands before the Lord.
Because you bring her up, though, there is a push to, you know, like with her being obese, you know what I'm saying? She's on some, like, I'm out here, like, check me out. You know what I'm saying? And there's a celebration of her being big like that, as if it's cool and healthy for her. That's not cool, you know what I'm saying?
It's not, but let me tell you why I think that's happening.
Does apply.
No, it does. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. I was gonna go there. I was just trying to say she's getting picked on, but like she's the only overweight person out there, right? And Candace Owens will always go after black people because that's that's her thing.
That's what she do.
But that's what she does. And so, but my point is the reason why even the term body shaming exists is because there's a history of all standards of beauty look a certain way, and even the Bible says beauty's in the eyes of the beholder, right?
Right.
So like, there's going to be somebody that looks at your wife and doesn't think she's attractive at all. Now, you don't care, obviously, because you do. There's going to be people look at my wife and think she's not, or look at us. Okay, beauty's an eye of the beholder, but we've applied that standard in a way that's selective, you know? So in America, the European view of beauty, very thin, very chiseled faces, is beautiful. But you go to Africa, these women look way different. So that's why people were shocked when, like, some of these African women with low bald heads and real dark skin would be Victoria's Secret models. Like, she's not, but she's not pretty to your standards, to the European view of beauty. But over here, man, dudes will give their right arm to be with this woman, right? So again, the reason why there's a celebration of people like Lizzo is because historically, because you're fat, you would have never gotten this opportunity. Yeah. They would have, they'd ashamed. That's why. So that's where the language of body shaming comes in, right?
Got you.
But again, it's not, I don't think people are thinking she's healthy, don't say that. I think they're saying, stop, we, you know, because here's the thing, right? See, we're going into a direction now, but we're going to say this. And this is a different conversation, but we're going to say this right now. So when you talk about the reality of modeling, right? All of us have probably heard horror stories of what they've made models do. Models were anorexic, throwing up. Some models would get hooked on heroin because being hooked on drugs kept you didn't want to eat. You were thin, and that's the example that they
crazy high.
100%, and that you created a dynamic, a culture where beauty has to look like that. So now part of the Me Too, part of this new sort of coexist ideology is so people are picking on her because of health, and she needs to lose weight. I need to lose weight. Okay, that's real. But the reason why people aren't celebrating diabetes or the possibility of it or a heart attack, what they're celebrating is you have not allowed us to coexist for so long, and now we're going to force it to happen. And that's this is how all of this is. So this is sexuality. This is all of these things are sort of moving. It's a deeper movement of coexisting. Let's eliminate things like mental health. Well, listen, my son's on the spectrum, but I don't want his identity to be, no, son, autism is not your superpower. I'm not going to, but it's not going to be your crutch either, but I'm not going to be like, no, son, that's not the identity I want him to have. So that's one major example.
It's wild because this is the same society that would do that, would tell you not to shame a Lizzo, would also put up a woman in a certain shape and say that everyone else must go get augmentation if they want to look as good as her.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So now you got mad people flying to different places to get butt augmentations and chest 100%. Augmentations and face augmentations and teeth done and everything done to look like a certain person that, you know, dudes want to see.
100%, bro.
You know, it's the same society that'll tell you. So there is a shaming. It's just a sneaky shaming.
But this is why there's such a like, hey, Kool-Aid, oh yeah, busting through the wall. There's a pushback, right? Because we're not stupid. We know that Kim Kardashian set in motion a whole range of, okay, here's a standard for beauty. Everyone now wants to look like her. They've had plastics, even her sisters. They've all had plastic surgery. They're all made. So even the rise of plastic surgery, right? It's all done in a way that's like, you have to be like, so there is a subtle, so that's why there's such a strong pushback saying, no, we're not going to look like that. And we are going to celebrate talented big women like Lizzo. And I don't think Lizzo's like, shoot, I don't need to lose no weight. I think that's a front. I'm sure she's uncomfortable, but she's doing what she's got to do. She's making money. And this is a season where, and this really started really with, in particularly with being overweight, this really started, you saw the turn with Roseanne. Roseanne, her show was one of the first shows where, wow, this is a really big woman and she's funny, but she's vulgar, but it worked. And so she was sort of the impetus. I'm sure there were other shows prior to that, but she was the impetus of this happening. Well, now the fuller sort of, hey, we're pushing back against standards of beauty and all of this stuff. And in one level, I appreciate it. Now, when you zoom in on her health, it's like, but no one's saying who cares about diabetes if she has a heart attack. They're saying we think she's beautiful being overweight. Right. That's what they're getting at. And on one level, I get it, but there's a deeper movement happening. Let's eliminate things that will embarrass us. Let's eliminate mistakes that we make. Let's eliminate our imperfections and say that there are none. And that's dangerous. And that's what's happening with mental health, with obesity, with whatever, right? So that's one major example. All right. Here's another example where you see the deeper movement of coexisting, right? So it's the infusion of cultural Jesus. All right. So there's an infusion of cultural Jesus. Now, because we come out of rap culture, right? We come out of the hip hop culture. It's easier for us to go there first and talk about these things. So like some of you who are watching and or listening aren't rap fans like us. You don't listen to us for our rap knowledge. And to be honest, we've shifted from season 2 and part of 3 to we don't talk about it as much, but it is very much a part of our culture. We make music. I'm releasing a mixtape soon. Strax got music out. Like that's a culture we identify with. Outside of Christ, that would be the culture that we say, we are who we are because of this culture. Right. So in this culture, you will hear like recently a man named DJ Khaled, big dude by the way, dropped an album. He's like a producer. He makes beats and gets these people to rap, really popular rappers and singers come together. Yeah, he dropped an album called God Did, right? And the whole point is this: you didn't believe in us, but God did, right? And I know I said this on the show a couple episodes ago. Yeah, I think when we think God, we're wired to think Christianity, Jesus. We're wired to think the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But there are other gods. The Bible clearly calls other Elohim, right? Elohim is a plural term in the Hebrew that means gods, right? So you got passages like Psalm 82, where Yahweh is talking to other gods that are not governing accurately and saying, you all are going to die like men because of it. So and I said on the show that episode, but we don't know what God you're talking about. We have no idea what God believed in you, right? We don't know who that is. But there is this cultural Jesus that we coexist, like either with like Khaled's or Freddie Gibbs' new album. He's got people singing gospel about Jesus in a song called Couldn't Be Done Without Jesus. But his whole lifestyle, there's nothing about anything else that he says and does that does that. And so, and let me just say this now, and you feel free to weigh in on this track. I feel like for believers in our country, here's how we get pulled into coexistence. Now, you could disagree with me on this, any of you, and I'm fine with that. I can handle. I've been shot at point blank range. I can handle you disagreeing with me, right? But I feel like as believers, we will latch on to celebrity confessions, right? Now, I'm excited I'm trying to be like heaven and rejoice every time a sinner repents, says they believe in Jesus. Amen. But we get more excited when they're a celebrity, and then we extend to them a measure of grace that I don't think the Bible is that gracious towards people, right? I think the Bible is pretty clear. If you believe in Jesus, you live for him. And if you don't, then you should be concerned, right? His commands are not burdensome, 1 John 5:3. I think at times as believers, we will take a celebrity profession like a Kanye, be excited because there seemed to be some fruit. Then we'll still talk like, well, I think he's a Christian, even though he's wilding right now. Now, I'm not saying he's not because of it, but the Bible's language is a little bit more black and white than that. Because we do have parables like Mark 4. Some seeds land on the rock. They sprout up quickly, but when trouble comes because of the word, they wither, right? There's a number of different people that hear the word, but are too choked up by it. So again, I think part of the way we coexist is as believers, people who really try to honor the Lord, we coexist and pretend like people are maybe Christians, even though they are totally dishonoring the Lord in so many ways. I don't think we're supposed to do that. Now, I'm not saying this person's going to hell because we're not supposed to do that either. But I am going to say like this person, I'm judging the tree by the fruit that it bears. And right now, you don't bear the marks of Christ on your body. I don't see it. So I think among the church even, there is an embracing of coexisting with cultural things, especially if they sort of resemble things. So this is where, back to Christian nationalism, right? They conservatives resemble values that we think are closer biblically. And I talked about this last episode, so we're not going to get into all. I'm not going to repeat everything about, what makes something Christian is not laws that are passed, right? But people who believe, right? But again, this merging of like having guys like James Lindsay, a devout, hardcore atheist speaking at Southern Baptist conventions and Turning Point USA, hosting pastors' conferences. It's totally because we're coexisting with this sort of political entity, talking, defending, prophesying as if Donald Trump is our man. All this stuff. It's just like, now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying vote conservative. I'm a conservative, to be honest. I would never vote Democrat personally, but I don't vote now at all because it's too volatile. But my point is, there's a sense where even for us, we're coexisting with a cultural Jesus to the point where it's hard for us to even distinguish what's genuine or not. We got people shaming us because we're not essentially bowing down to this at the cultural Jesus crucifixion. So I'm supposed to like vote this way or believe this way and go march against this, but how I carry myself is not important. If I love people, that's not important. But that is to the biblical Jesus, but to the cultural Jesus, as long as you agree with me on these issues, we stand together against our opponents, right? So these are ways that this deeper movement of coexist has really taken shape in our lives, in our culture, in the world, in ways that the bumper sticker never has. It's actually worked in a more sinister way, in a deeper movement where it's like, wow, let's eliminate all these things. So now I'm not even comfortable saying that there's a difference between a man and a woman. I'm not even comfortable saying With that fill in the blank, right? I'm not even comfortable acknowledging this. It's like, wow, I can't even do these things because we've sort of assimilated, right, into this cultural coexistence movement where it may not work its way in the religious side, and to some degree it has, but not in the way that it was intending to. But on the social side, on the anthropological side, whew, we are living in a crazy time. And this idea of coexistence is sort of what's been happening. Let's coexist with all these things. There's no distinction. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. There's no mistakes. There's no imperfections, right? They'll even quote the Bible, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. Yeah, that's a huge problem. It's a huge problem that leads to another deep concern. Is that embarrassment? Go ahead.
But before you move on, I want to try to grab exactly. I want to make sure everyone's grabbing what you're trying to say as far as how this connects. So when you talk about coexistence within the church, I mean, I guess you're assuming with the church when you talk about Kanye because he's professing to be a Christian.
Yeah.
So when you talk about coexistence, what does that look like? I mean, I guess what is the opposite of allowing Kanye to just continue what he does or whatever? And I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out what is the answer to or the opposite of coexisting, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Like,
so what does being biblical look like?
Yeah, what does it look like? I mean, if you want to use that terminology, what does it look like? How do we then deal with Kanye if not dealing with him according to his profession of faith? Like,
yeah, I think we deal with him according to the manifestations of his faith, brother. So like, if I'm talking to Kanye, I'm not going to treat him like he's a Christian when he's wilding right now. So if I'm talking, I'm going to say, brother, you are not, like, I'm judging the tree by the fruit that it bears, bro. You are not acting and looking like a believer right now.
But I would say that is treating him like a Christian. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that is treating him like a Christian, is holding him accountable to the Christian standard because he's professing to be a Christian.
Right.
So if go ahead.
But I'm not defending him as a Christian as if there's no way he's not because he made a profession of faith. And I think that's what happens with celebrities. We will talk like because they made a public profession of faith, they're a believer. And I think sometimes we want them to be believers just so that our faith, what we believe, looks good and is accepted on a popular level. But it's not. But we're not really, unless they're a pastor or something, we're quick to tear down pastors. But if they're a celebrity, an athlete, a singer, a musician, something, we will talk about them and attribute to them salvation in ways that I don't think their actions have earned. So again, we can say, okay, let's say you're not acting like a Christian. What I'm talking about is there are some of us that won't even say, brother, you're not bearing fruit. They'll think he's a Christian because he made a profession of faith. He put out Jesus as king. And again, that's a superstar. So it's hard to measure someone like Kanye. I think to be faithful, we have to be willing to say, I'm not sure if you're really saved.
Right. So
I'm questioning your salvation.
So if we could bring it home, I think for me personally, cause Kanye's just so far out there and so much to think about. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's such a huge character. To kind of bring it home for myself and maybe for others, if you, like, at church, right? If you're fellowshipping week in and week out, and there's a couple that is a part of your church, they're not married and they're living together, but this church continues to worship together week in, week out. No one's really saying anything to this couple. They're allowing them to just continue in fornication. That, I think, to me, would be an example of what you're saying, like this compromise of coexistence for the sake of keeping a neutrality or a peace, you know, or the healthiness, if you will, of the body, so that there's no turmoil or no division. You know what I'm saying? Is that what?
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
I think when you break it down, because I was going to say we have to move away from Kanye to do that because it's just he's too much out there. And
it's too much to think about.
Yeah, but in a practical level, yeah, I think here's the reality. Let's just be clear. Let's just be honest. All of us are in churches that probably have a few people that we have concerns or questions about, but we're fear of man. We won't say anything. We'd rather pretend like it's not, we may not be seeing what we're seeing, or we don't, whatever it is. We'll find justifications for it and not do what you're talking about, Strack. I think that happens. I think we relate to people based on, and this happens a lot with parents, like people who just want their kids to be saved. They relate to them based on a time in their lives when they were bearing fruit, but they're not doing it right now. They haven't been to church. But you just hoping against hope that they're saved. So in a sense, that's coexisting because it's wanting to just sort of eliminate sin. Let's eliminate the sin that's there. Let's eliminate all of this stuff and just coexist and that's dangerous.
Right.
And
in essence, coexistence is, rejoice in the sin that's around you. It's okay. You know what I mean?
Or not even rejoice, but just allow it to persist. Yeah.
Yeah, let it be.
Allow it to persist.
It'd be like, we bring a huge pile of dung and put it in the middle of the living room.
100%.
And everybody just has to live with it. Let's put up a bumper sticker that says just everybody just be dookie about it. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to use a different word, but yeah. Right. That's how it is, man.
But you get ready to drop a cuss word like they thought I was cussing last week. Remember that? Dude was like, hey, I thought he was going to cuss too. Yeah. So again, but this is what I'm saying. Like it's we embrace things. So like even on a political level, I think it's possible to be a conservative, right? Vote conservative, but not see those who don't vote conservative as going to hell or somehow trying to destroy. I think it's possible for you to have a political ideology and still be faithful to the Lord on a what we talked about earlier, on a golden rule level, on a Galatians 6:10 level. I think it's possible. I mean, I do that constantly because I have people in my church that will vote. They're going to vote. They vote differently. And I'm the pastor. And so, again, but I think what happens is in the coexist, you're not willing to coexist you're coexisting with a political party, right? And just like prime example, like I get that abortion, people mostly say do not murder. Fam, there's a lot of murders that happen that are not just abortion, that nobody doesn't care anything about. So let's just be clear, like do not murder, you're applying it selectively then. Because there are murders that happen that no one's outraged about at all. That could be outraged about. Or you disagree with when people. So if my son gets shot and killed by police and he shouldn't have, and I'm outraged about it, the pushback is, well, what about black on black crime though? What about abortion? As if like I'm only allowed to be, if I'm applying the do not murder, then I'm also, why can't I apply it in this situation?
Those are such stupid arguments.
They're just dumb. But again, it's just you're coexisting with a political entity.
Right.
So I just think it's the infusion of a cultural Jesus that we accept these things. Like honestly, we were talking about this earlier, right? In Acts 8, so you got Simon the magician. This is something that's crazy to me. Simon the magician, right? He gets saved, right? So this is Acts chapter 8. As a matter of fact, I think I have it all. I'm gonna read. So Simon gets saved, right? And then it says he's following the disciples around. He's amazed at all the signs and wonders they're doing, right? And then let me read to you what Acts 8 says, all right? Here's what it says. It says, now, this is beginning in verse 14. Now, when the apostles at Jerusalem heard that Samaria had received the word of God, they sent to them Peter and John, who came down and prayed for them that they might receive the Holy Spirit. For he had not yet fallen on any of them, but they had only been baptized in the name of the Lord Jesus. Then they laid their hands on them, and they received the Holy Spirit. Now when Simon saw the Spirit was given through the laying on of the apostles' hands, he offered them money, saying, give me this power also, so that anyone whom I lay hands may receive the Holy Spirit. But now this is a guy who had just gotten saved maybe a few days ago, baptized in all of it, right? Here's what Peter says to Simon. May your silver perish with you, because you thought you could obtain the gift of God with money. You have neither part nor lot in this matter, for your heart is not right before God. Repent therefore of this wickedness of yours, and pray to the Lord that if possible, the intent of your heart may be forgiven you. For I see that you are in the gall of bitterness and in the bond of iniquity. Simon answered, pray for me to the Lord that nothing of what you said may come upon me. Now, this is describing what happened. I'm not saying it's prescribing what should happen. And Peter, obviously filled with the Spirit, may have saw something in Simon that we wouldn't have just by reading, right? But I look at this and think, man, this guy's just not discipled. He doesn't understand what's going on yet. He just got saved. Why would he not? But there's a sense where, fam, I'm calling you to the carpet. Like, this is I don't think we do that. So, like, it's fine, vote conservative, but don't treat these politicians better than you do other believers. You're willing to coexist with these people because they help you feel safer in your country, but not the people that you're going to spend eternity with. Right? So again, it's this, there's an infusion of a cultural Jesus. And the cultural Jesus is not just saying I believe in Jesus, but any values that seemingly represent what we call Judeo-Christian values. This coexist movement is ravaging the church in many ways. That's why you can have atheists preaching at pastors' conferences, and pastors are more concerned about, or at least were more concerned about socialism.
You know what? This magician, man, he wanted to buy the gift of God, like the Holy Spirit. How you going to buy the Holy Spirit? You know what I'm saying? He wanted to buy whatever these men were doing, and that within itself just kind of revealed, what he deemed as the great authority, which was Mammon.
Right. That part I get. Yeah. But what I'm saying is but he's also a new believer. He doesn't know. Yeah. It's not like you get saved and all of a sudden you understand all theology and all morality. Like, everyone has to learn and grow, and we both have led people to the Lord, and it took them some time to get focused, right? So it's like it's just like, I was about to use an example of something, but I don't want to say
it's just an odd response for someone who did just supposedly get saved. I mean, if you get saved,
right? And I don't want to response. Sure, I'm using that as an example, but my point was that Peter was like, "Hey, I need to correct this dude. You wilding right now." Peter
treated him like an unbeliever.
He treated him like an unbeliever, and I feel like we can't do that in the coexistence. As long as you agree with me, like, listen, let me just say this: you are a shallow Christian if, because someone agrees with something politically, that you will give them the benefit of the doubt more than you will someone who professes to believe what you believe, reads the Bible that you read, prays and all that stuff. You won't give them the benefit of the doubt over something that's but you'll give that's shallowness. Mm-hmm. Like, I just want to, because they're sharing my values as a conservative. My identity, your identity is not liberal or conservative. It's not how much. Man, the Bible is replete in the New Testament with people who did all this stuff. Oh Lord, didn't we baptize people? Didn't we do this? Didn't we do all these mighty works? I said, I don't know you, fam. I don't know you. There gonna be politicians like, well, Jesus, didn't we go after abortion, and didn't we stand up for social justice and create laws? That did you? He's like, I don't know you guys. You weren't motivated by faith in me. So again, I don't want to go with that because we talk about that a lot. My point is that the coexistence movement is actually the end of embarrassment, mistakes, and imperfections, but then it embraces things and it allows ourselves to coexist with things that we know aren't necessarily biblical, but we'll fight tooth and nail to try to make them biblical so that we can continue to coexist. That's the concern I'm talking about on one level. But then there's another level, because see, like embarrassment, right? A lot of embarrassment is really a self-imposed deterrent to sinful autonomy. There are times when you get in. I remember when recently, so after the Ema Udoka, sort of adultery sort of scandal, the head coach of the Boston Celtics came out. Adam Levine had the lead singer of Maroon 5 was exposed by this young girl. She was like 23. But she was exposed by him as being in a relationship with him, though he was married. And then there was other girls who were saying, and they were posting screenshots. And this one girl said that he contacted her on Instagram and said, "Oh man, I would love to be naked with you or something right now." And she was like,
"Yo, that's wild."
That's what he said to her on Instagram on the DMs, right? Or it goes down in the DMs. And this is her response. I'm paraphrasing, but here was her response. She said, "Aren't you married? Question mark LOL, right?
Good for her.
Good for her, right?" She said, "Aren't you married? Like, what are you doing?" So I'm saying that to say, like, and he was embarrassed by that, right? Their embarrassment is often a deterrent to sinful autonomy. I'm embarrassed by that. Now, I'm not saying it's conviction. Embarrassment can be a bad thing, but it can also be like, you know what? Let me. I'll never forget. I'll share this one story. So I'm a comedian. I walk up and talk to people, make them laugh and all that, right? So I was at this church. I was kind of new to this church and new to the kind of theology that I believe now. And there was a group of guys talking, and I know these guys. They're friends of mine. So I walked up and just started cutting up, right? Just joking around, I don't even know they were talking. I just walked into the circle and started just being me, right? And then the guy who was one of my best friends to this day, but he was a pastor then. He was my pastor then. He said, "Kurt, man, hold on, man. He's telling us his engagement story, how he proposed to his fiance. You're just interrupting us." And so I was embarrassed by that. And I was grateful because, from that month, this was like 20 years ago. This was like longer. It was like 20 years ago, 2002. From that one situation embarrassed me enough that I was like, man, let me chill. Let me not walk up into these situations and just take over. And so now I can walk into, I'm the lead pastor of my church. I walk in, I'll just chill, sit in the back. People, you wouldn't even know I'm the pastor unless you knew I was the pastor. Like that embarrassment, because I felt stupid.
We call that in Spanish the tate quieto, John. That's like that's a tate quieto. That's a be still and know that he is God.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but where I'm from, we call it a head bust. You got your head clunked over, right? But that embarrassment was good for me because it was a deterrent to the arrogance of thinking that I can just walk into any scene and just take over no matter what's happening. So when you eliminate being embarrassed, then you eliminate this sort of self-deterrent, whether you believe or not, that just will help you be more effective in a society. That's where good, what you think is not. So the elimination of embarrassment or mistakes and imperfections, hey, listen, that is the essence of humanity. If you eliminate mistakes and imperfections, then you eliminate the need for redemption or the need for forgiveness. You eliminate, because let's be clear, mistakes and imperfections are just very neutral societal terms for sin. Most times when people are talking about mistakes or imperfections, they're usually talking about sin, displays of sin that we shouldn't feel bad about or shouldn't shame people for. They're not talking about, oh, he spilled coffee on the floor, what a mistake. They're talking about neutral terms for sin.
What this sounds like when you talk about the removal of embarrassment, it really just sounds like the removal of light. Like they're removing light so you can't see anymore.
100%, bro. 100%. And I think that's a great illustration. It is the removal of light. It's the lampstands. These ladies went to go get some oil for their lampstands because they weren't lit and they got left. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's the removal of light. But that's what makes us human. Like, part of what makes us human is that we're going to be embarrassing. We're going to be embarrassed. We're going to make mistakes. Right. We're going to have imperfections. That's what Jesus came because of the existence of all these things. This is why he lived perfectly, why he didn't make mistakes. He didn't do anything that he said, I always do what pleases the Father, right? So everything, even down to him being in the garden saying, take this cup from me. The Father was pleased by that and wanted him to do that.
You know what just occurred to me? This would ultimately lead to the removal of the shame of the cross.
100%. Why would there be any shame of the cross? Right. Why would there be a need for a cross, first and foremost? But then why would there be? Because you eliminate and this is the culture we're living in. Let's get rid of, don't ever talk about, don't make, and obviously people don't do it because if you disagree with them, then they'll hit you upside your head vitriolically, right? But the point is, the idea, at least, it's a faux pas, but the idea is, let's get rid of things that would embarrass or mistakes or imperfections, unless it's a particular kind of person. So if you're a white male, well, you have a history of dominating in the nation. Well, about face, now you're the one that people are going to have the least grace for. Right?
And it comes back to the original intent of the sticker too, because if you try to tell a Christian to coexist with other religions, you're telling the Christian to deny Christ.
100%. 100%.
You're denying the cross.
You deny Christ, and you deny that when you do that. But because the essence of humanity is to have these things, which is why Christ came. And so, and even now, we make mistakes, we're imperfect, but they're given to Christ at the cross. He took our punishment, we take his righteousness, right? So we don't have to, our identity isn't those things. But let's be clear. 2 Corinthians 7, right? Paul brings up these two categories, conviction and condemnation. Conviction will bear fruit and lead people to want to, that's when you're embarrassed, you feel bad about this, you go after it. And then there's condemnation, you just feel guilt, right? So he said conviction leads to life, condemnation is the world's guilt. It leads to death, right? But conviction and condemnation feel the same initially. It's what you do with that conviction that tells you which one it is, right? So you ever heard someone be like, man, I just feel like the Lord can't love me. I'm just too sinful. I can't do. That's condemnation.
Yep.
So, and then I've seen people walk away from the faith because of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're led to question the Lord's capability to love you, it's condemnation.
Say that again?
Whenever you're questioning the Lord's love for you, it's condemnation.
Yeah, condemnation, 100%.
It's condemnation.
100%. So again, when we see this, I think these are things that the Savior died for, right? These imperfections, these mistakes. When you eliminate those, then what do you need forgiveness for? Forgiveness for what? I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not embarrassed by anything. So let me say, hey, I actually am sexually attracted to children, and that's just a preference. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. I mean, that's where we're headed. You see, when you eliminate when you eliminate these things, then you're coexisting with the opposite of them. And that's the problem. And then there's one more, which I think is a greater concern on many levels, is you get to a point where if there are no mistakes and imperfections, nothing to be embarrassed about, then you kind of transcend humanity, right? So if anyone thinks that transgender is the goal, then you're mistaken. There's transhumanism. There's articles that I could send you that I read. When I did an album a few years ago, I worked on an album called Fallacy. And I had songs and things that were headed in this direction, describing that transhumanism, like people wanting to transcend even being human. And right now it's still kind of weird to us. Oh, I'm a dinosaur, or all this stuff, right? People can act like they're not. For the most part, it hasn't taken root. But there's a sense where there is a movement of transhumanism, right? And a lot of these people would see significant mental health sort of abnormalities as superior to those who don't have them. So normal is now being normal. We do this now because there is no normal, right? Like we're not even comfortable. Normal is now being abnormal. Normal is now the celebration of the embracing of what we would consider significant issues. Stuff that I think Jesus may have cast a demon out of.
That's right.
Right? There's a transcending of humanity where we're getting to a point where we don't even associate anymore with the realities that we live around. We no longer have to.
The weird are only celebrated when nobody's weird.
You right, exactly.
Like, I mean, the song "The Freaks Come Out at Night."
Right.
Why do they come out at night?
Right.
Because there's no light to see where the freaks is at. You don't know who the freak is. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Get the freak out of here.
Right. Get out of here. It's just a reality, and so we're moving towards if you take away these things that are the essence of humanity, part of them at least, obviously mistakes and imperfections, and that's not but that's fundamentally who we are. Once you remove those, then we're no longer human, right? So we transcend humanity. Once you take away the reality and the concern of mental health issues and things like that, then you have no recourse. There's no standard of measurement at all. We're just coexisting with everything. It's the end of all discernment, end of all distinctions. You don't even know.
The end of all boundaries, the end of all
100%. And that's what's happening in the culture.
I mean, when you want to talk about transhumanism, we are doing it culturally at a level where, we're able to afford it. You know what I'm saying? That I mean, there's people who are spending crazy money to get transformations done on their body.
100%.
Like,
and they're spending our money because our taxpayers pay for it too.
Facts. Now that laws are changing, especially even behind bars and everything. Yeah. But when you talk about transhumanism, just do a little bit of research into the technocrats. I mean, these are people who are actually making progress in transferring human consciousness into computers. Because they want to progress humanity. They don't want us to just be what we are, flesh and bone. We're too 100%. Fragile. They're trying to create a way to extend life to eternity.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. So there's that. That's crazy, right? But then you have what we know from the other side. A couple years ago when I was working on philosophy, there are right now, there's some in America, of course, but there's some in Europe because I read articles on these. There are what they call brothels in Europe right now as we speak. Wow. Brothels in Europe where humans can go in and have sex with artificial women, like not real women. I'm not talking about just blow up dolls. I'm talking about like there were some of these, they were creating some of these women. There was one in particular that I was like, that is insane. Like she looks like a real woman. And men can pay. I read. I forgot where the article. I didn't bring all that for this episode. Maybe another one. But there was an article I read that said by 2050, people will be married and living with non-human that look like human people, and it'll be normal. This article said it was like Psychology Today or something. Said by 2050, right?
I mean, when you look at how far the technology's come as far as androids is concerned. Right. It's wild what they're able to do now.
Man, it's wild, bro. And we don't see it because we watch it in movies and think, but you're right, though, bro. It's wild. It's real.
Yeah, it's real. No. This stuff is really happening. And those things at the brothel, I say things because they're not people, they're not females, but they're, at best, just sculptures.
They are sculptures.
They're just plastic sculptures that someone is fornicating with. Having
actual sexual, and then sexual release,
relations.
Right? It's 100%.
With a sculpture.
The sculpture, not real. People doing
crazy.
Remember a couple years ago, people were having actual wedding ceremonies, marrying themselves. And I'm talking about. I saw a ceremony that had like 60 people there, of a woman marrying herself, fam. Like we don't see this stuff a lot, so we kind of have an out of sight, out of mind mentality. If I don't see it,
what it would look like for her to divorce herself.
100. What would it look like? Who you gonna give half to? Half your assets to, right? So, again,
you're stupid.
But the reason why I'm laughing because the absurdity of it is real. But this is because
of me.
Yeah, this is what happens. This is what happens when you have. And this is the deeper implications of the coexistence movement. Like, let's coexist. Let's eliminate all these things that make us human so that when we do things that are inhumane, it's like, well, we're not really human. We transcend humanity.
It's normal.
It's normal. Yeah. Like, being a human is like, that's so yesterday, bro. That's so 21st. That's so 2020, being a human. Like, you still date, like, what? You're still trying to, like, what are you talking about, fam? That's so 2010. That's how people talk. Like, it's like, what? Right. So again, and we call it progressive, whatever, history's on our side, all this type of stuff. There's different ways to say it, but it really is a deeper implication of the coexistence movement. So again, the bumper sticker is not accomplishing religiously what it's intending to do, but oh man, has that bumper sticker become a cultural ideology, at least in our country. Obviously, I'm not everywhere else, and I'm not, going to do research to find out how it's affecting everything, right? But there is a degree in which our country has been shaped by the ideology of the bumper sticker of coexist. And if we as believers, those of us who do profess to believe, if we're going to... So I'm a firm believer. The reason why me and Strack talk about the things that we talk about and the way we do them and try to think about, because I'm convinced that, I think this is Matthew 13, where Jesus said, look, you know that it's going to rain because you look at the clouds and can interpret the weather.
Right.
And he said, but you cannot interpret the sign of the times.
That's right.
And so there's no command outside of that I'm aware of. But there is actually, no, that's not true. You do have be sober minded, right? You got that 1 Peter 5. So there is a sense where I need to be sober minded. I need to take my thoughts captive. And so for me, there's a conviction that I have to understand the sign of the times. And what that means for me is, how is the prince of the power of the air working right now? I'm not talking about what people do I agree with or disagree with. I'm talking about how is the spirit of the age impacting society right now, and how does it play out for those of us that believe? That's why I make the music that I make. That's why we do this show and hit the angles that we do. We do not do the Christian TMZ thing. We could easily do that. I have boatloads of stuff to say about all the news stories.
It's a waste of time.
But for us, it's not. I mean, there are people that do it. For us, it is. There are people that do it, and I think they give a good perspective on. We just not going to do that because
it would be a waste of my time. You know what I'm saying? Like but I'll listen to those videos while I'm painting. So they're not a waste of time like that.
I appreciate them. I appreciate some of them, man. I think some people do a good job of them. So this is just not what we do, because a lot of that is just flesh and blood facts and news. I'm trying to think about, what is the spirit of the age doing right now? And how is this subtly playing out? I'm not worried about what this dude said, but what are the implications spiritually mean? And that's what we try to present to you guys. So Amen. That's what we do, man. We do all of that. And sometimes, by the Lord's humor, we end up doing things that reflect the larger, broader audience, like this bad boy right here. So Dahmer is still the number one.
Get that John. Go get that John.
Dahmer, serial killer, is still the number one show on Netflix. I did an album in December of last year called Serial Killer Smiling Picture. It's streaming everywhere. Spotify. Go get this album. I'm not going to make much money from it if you buy it on Spotify, if you listen on Spotify. So it's not even a money thing. I'm not even saying it because I make pennies at Spotify, and it's not even an Apple Music store. I'm not making money unless a ton of people get it. I'm saying it because I want you to listen to. I did this album a year ago, and then a year later, the idea of serial killers is like back out there. I just read another article about somewhere there was some serial killer that was on the loose, and they were contacting all the residents. It was like 2 or 3. I was like, this is crazy. I did an album, like, why are we drawn to that? What is the significance for us? America has 66% of the world's serial killers, but we're the land of opportunity. Why is that the case? I talk about a lot of that on this album. So please, I want you to hear it for your benefit, really, because I'm not going to make much money from it unless a ton of people go get it, which is not going to happen. So, but I just check it out if you're a rap fan. Check it out. Listen to it cover to cover. You will be, because it's an albumentary, so it's music and a documentary. So you'll hear music and then news clips that carry you along throughout the album that tell a deeper story. Yes, so, hey man, encouraged to be here with you guys. Thank you so much. You can follow us on Twitter if you so choose. I'm at Kirk Kennedy, his hype man there on the screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. If you like the episode and the content, do 3 things. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Like the video, and then leave a comment in the actual video. So right now, this is a live stream. If you leave a comment here, and some of you have, that's cool. That's crazy, right? Appreciate it. So, but once the episode is published by itself, leave comments under there, because then that'll set the algorithm off. We only say that. Everyone says it. Obviously, we definitely believe that we have content that we think would be helper to the broader body of Christ, but we can only do but so much. I'm limited. I don't do this full time. Right. We work hard to put together episodes and think about what would be engaging for those who listen to us, and how can we also talk about things that are not what everybody else is talking about. That's something that me and Strack really work at, because we look at, again, deeper sort of non-flesh and blood implications of what the spirit of the age is doing.
And it's encouraging to know that we're making an impact and that people are also sharing and listening.
100%.
That encourages us to
very encouraged by that. We are very encouraged. To be honest, I just got so tired of Twitter. Like, I still have an account, but I rarely use it lately. I'm more excited about YouTube because you all are there's much more positivity here. There's much more gratitude. And so I'm excited about that. I'm hoping that our channel grows, not so much so that we can monetize as much. I don't look to this to make money, but I want to just be able to helpfully have some influence in a culture that's so bizarre right now. And I think some of it is due to what we're calling coexistence. Mm-hmm. This pressure, and it's subtle. It's a subtle pressure to coexist with all of these, ideologies, these philosophies. Colossians 2 is perfect for this. Yep. I'm going to actually close with this. You got Abner's Brush. Don't forget to go to Abner's Brush. Look at that picture in the back with the man breakdancing. My man is sick with the brush. Yeah, go to Abner's Brush.
I got a single dropping on Friday, too. Me and Apologists.
That's right. Y'all get y'all thing off. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm dropping a mixtape in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Called Serial Killer Still Smiling. So it's going to be some songs, bars, and punches stuff for y'all. Appreciate it. Go to KurtKennedy.com. And let me just end with this. Here's what he says in Colossians 2. He said, therefore, beginning of verse 6, as you receive Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk in him, rooted and built up in him and established in the faith, just as you were taught, abounding in thanksgiving. See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, right? According to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ. Amen. Our whole episode can be summed up in the admonition that God says right here in Colossians 2, 6-8.
Yes, sir.
We not falling for it. I ain't got that much money, so I definitely ain't buying it. So, and we don't want you to either. So, all right, man, it's been a privilege. I'm getting ready to go watch the Redskins make me upset playing the Chicago Bears Thursday Night Football. That game starts at 8:15, and God in his sovereign wisdom allowed this show to end at 8:14. I'm Kurt Kennedy. He's Track the Wolverine. You are who you are. Thanks for watching us. We appreciate y'all. And we will see you next Thursday, y'all. Grace and peace.
Peace.
You know what I'm